So welcome everyone to this BJSS webinar, The Journey to Digital Transformation as part of Leeds Digital Festival. We are recording the session today and we do encourage people to ask questions. If you can use the Q&A functionality, ask them as you go along, but we will have time at the end to go through everything. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to our awesome Sparkies, Rebecca and Davide.
Thank you, Karen. Hi everyone, so it's great to see so many people dialed into our last Sparck Leeds Digital Festival talk. Today we have Davide talking about the journey to digital transformation. Davide is one of our service designers. He's got skills across UX, research, service design obviously, and I've worked with Davide on many digital transformation projects, so I'm really excited to hear what he's going to say. Davide is from Italy. It's great to welcome him to his very first Leeds Digital Festival, and he's got a background in economics and digital transformation. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Davide to start his talk. And as Karen said, we'll be taking questions at the end. If you have any questions, just put them in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen and we'll have a bit of a Q&A session right at the end. Okay, thanks, Davide.
Hello, thank you everyone who's joining in. The title of my talk is The Journey to Digital Transformation, and specifically I will look at how to move past challenges in the digital journey with a service design mindset. So before starting with my talk, I just wanted to thank you all for dialing in. When I first started to think about having this talk, I would have never ever expected to just be talking to so many people. So thank you very much for trusting me and in this talk. And I also want to thank all the organizers and speakers. Now we have Karen and Rebecca on the call. I know that they have done so much work into this, and I'm almost like afraid of taking the spotlight from them because they were really so amazing throughout these days. And I really felt like a community as we were going along through it. So what will I talk about today? There will be a couple of key moments in this talk. So the first one will be the background to the talk. So why did I decide to do this talk? The second one is about the challenges of digital transformation and how I feel service design can help. The third one is my personal recommendations towards it. And then by the end, if you have any questions that weren't answered throughout my talk, you can just pop them in the Q&A. So without further ado, why did I decide to speak about this? So I think there should be just like a few things that you should know about me that are related to this talk. And I work as a service designer for Sparck, and I've been working for other organizations before in this role. And one thing that I love is change as a topic. So I feel very comfortable to it. I like changing things. I don't like to stay in, in those static situations. And this is confirmed by the fact that I'm a serial globetrotter. I just never stayed in the same place. So I was born in Italy, but then I just traveled all over the place, studied in Sweden and South Korea, went back to Sweden, then now I arrived to the UK, and who knows where it's going to be next. So for many of you, probably the word service designer is something new. Maybe some have already some background to it, but I just wanted to give you a bit what is my definition of service design. So as a service designer, I look at how organization can deliver the best experiences to end users across multiple channels. And my work goes beyond the traditional boundaries that are set up by organization. Now, these are just lots of words, but I would prefer them just to show you in an analogy. So just thinking you are going to your favorite gig, you have been waiting so much to go into that gig, and what you are experiencing actually is the front stage. You're seeing your band playing, you're really hyped, really excited, and you consume these products throughout the channels, the different touch points that are made. So like whether there are physical interfaces like the screens, lights, etc., etc. Now, behind that, there are lots of people who work to make this happen. So there are just people in the backstage who curate the lights, who curate the sound, but also there are lots of people working in making this event happen. So lots of people like managing the tickets, etc. So as a service designer, I like this whole process and trying to deliver the best experience possible for the users. In other words, if any of you has been dealing with designers before, I basically look at ecosystems. So if you start from the idea of graphic design, which is about like looking a lot about visuals, looking about symbols, and like product design, looking at how to interface, so how all these symbols will map out into a user interface. Then you have user researchers, like trying to get the understanding as best as possible about the users, how they interact with the product, how do they, what they value, etc. And then there is me as a service designer, looking at this whole ecosystem of processes behind the scenes, backstage, front stage, etc. And even like on a higher level, there are strategists which look at the direction that the company is taking and try to understand also what other companies are taking, etc., etc. So the way I like to understand it is as we work all together with different focuses. So someone looking more in specific to visuals, and me looking instead at the bigger picture with how the different ecosystems interact. A year ago, I joined Sparck and BJSS, and for me it was a great experience so far. What I like about this company is like that we are really good at designing things for the users, but we are also really good at delivering them. So thanks to both designers, tech people, and business consultants, we are able to find the right experience for the users and deliver that effectively with the best technology. Now, some example of digital transformation project for who maybe is new to the topic. Well, there can be many, and this is like normally the ones that I deal with as a service design consultant. So it can be digitalize manual and paper-based processes, replace an IT legacy system. So just imagine like a system that has been going on into your organization for a long time and you want to substitute that. It's about exploring new ideas and opportunities. And for me as a service designer, it's important to try to understand how can I make both users and businesses happy. So the reality was that as I joined Sparck, but also even before in general, as I started as a service designer, I used to hope for the perfect project. And that more or less looked like this. I was just imagining and picturing that myself as a straightforward road, like this is just gonna be easy. It's clear, we have the objective there, we are solving the right problem, we got time and resources, we got a plan. And I think many of us share this naivety on a point like of expectation. However, lots of time, reality kicks in and that straightforward road now started to look like more like this. So reality kicks in and we just realize, oh crap, we got the wrong problem. We don't have enough resources. What do I have to do? When do I have to do that? Who I talk to? And this gets so frustrating. And I used to be really frustrated in the beginning of my professional career. However, now I'm starting to realize that it's a very common situation. And the more I talked with my colleagues, which I really have to thank because they really made me grow a lot for sharing their experience and advice with me. So the more I talk with them, I realized that they all experience somewhat of these challenges in digital transformation. So I started to understand that I should stop expecting for the perfect project that just to arrive to me. That's not gonna happen. And this is because actually digital transformation is a journey. It's not the straightforward line as we were thinking before. So if you can visualize it like this, in a digital journey, you have a start, you have a target, and then there are loads of things that can happen in between. You have like unexpected challenges, a new idea come to you. There is a sudden change of direction. All of this move away from that straightforward line that we were thinking about before. So because of this, I just started to reframe this problem as an opportunity. So I started to think about how can service design help to move past the challenges on the way. And for those of you who are familiar with the methodology of How Might We, which is like try to frame problems as opportunities, I start to ask myself, oh, how might we as service designers best identify the challenges of digital transformation? And how might we as service designer help to unlock them? And this, I wanted to have them regardless of the brief that we were given. So I wanted to try to answer this question regardless of my specific task in a project. So before going into the details of this, I just want to tell you, this is not a traditional change management class. I haven't opened a book and tried to tell you the theory. This is like just really the diary of a practitioner. So this is just like what I've learned and what I want to share with you. So what's going to be next is going to be talking about real challenges that can happen to any service designer and some honest service design advice into them. So this is the bulk of my talk, the journey to digital transformation, challenges, and how service design can help. So normally when I start talking with people about digital transformation and the challenges they experience, I receive like loads of different statements and in a very confused order. So I just get people talking about unclear requirements. So we didn't really get the right thing we need from the business. We got people just telling me, I think we just got completely wrong user needs. We have lack of ownership, lack of trust, no autonomy, lack of skills, lack of tools, many of these things. So I wasn't even able to capture all of them in this slide. What I want to say about this, that despite this being all great indication of the problems that we have, I feel those are a bit too difficult to deal with it, to deal with them individually. So what I started to do, it was just like start to look at two that stand out from the others. So two that could really group most of them. And the first one is the first challenge to digital transformation is really about understanding people that are involved in the processes of digital transformation. The second one is to establish effective ways of working. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is specifically how to solve these two challenges. So understanding people. And the first time initially when I talk about this, people that just like don't understand it is like, oh, why people? And I just want to tell you, yes, technology is built and used by people. And despite this being quite an obvious statement, I actually feel it is not, because usually people what is often missed inside project or digital transformation is who are the people involved in them, what do they value, and how do they interact with each other. Now, just to make an example, I feel like normally in digital transformation problems, loads of the consideration just get stuck within these small circles. So like the digital team just coming in to try to boost innovation, the IT team just knowing really what the digital tools there are. But actually there are loads of other actors around that. So the ones that designers care the most about, of course, is users. But then there are the support staff, the front staff, there are sales, finance, marketing, the board. There are loads of other people who have loads of stake in the project. Now, all of them actually have different type of values. They have different type of tasks, needs, pain points, and even level of engagement. Some of them really care about what you're trying to do. And some others actually maybe are not that bothered. So you cannot expect too much collaboration about them. And to further complicate this, I usually feel that the information that are given to anyone who just try to approach a project of digital transformation are incomplete, because people just try to give you like enough information for you to start a project of digital transformation. But actually what you're missing in those type of briefs are like strategies, sale targets, the way marketing communicates to the users, the type of queries that the front staff might get, the support that the technical team might need to get. And all of this doesn't allow us to have a perfect information to continue with our project of digital transformation. Now, what is the challenge so for as a service designer is to try to think if service design can help to understand people relevant to our journey of digital transformation. And is that possible? Yes, I believe so. And I believe that this is our bread and butter as service designer. So there are loads of methods and tools that can help you to do that. I just mentioned a couple just to show you how I organize them. And there are methods dealing more with system thinking, so trying to imagine how the service works, so which are all the people involved throughout that. There are ways to map the stakeholders, ways to map the system, ways to understand better the users, so borrowing from our fellow user researchers. So trying to do user interviews, trying to get inside map, personas, or just try to map the whole experience of the user. So user journey, service blueprinting, and technology touchpoints. Now, I'm aware that not all of you might have knowledge on how this method works. So I just wanted to give you a quick example of how this works in practice. So just imagine a random project that you are brought in and to activate digital transformation. So a company is looking to introduce an innovative system for ATM. So we are dealing with the ecosystem of ATM cash withdrawal. Now, this sounds like as a very straightforward type of problem, but it's not. So I just threw together a quick ecosystem map. That this is something that I use within project to visualize all people, products, system, places that are relevant for this project, and look at the value exchanges, flows, and relationship within them. So in this case, just imagine someone going as a user to the ATM and just trying to withdraw money. Actually, what you're not capturing there is maybe who is this person having a card contract with. Maybe he's have a card contract with bank A and is going to withdraw money on ATM for card B. Now, to make this happen, there needs to be an exchange of money between the banks, and this transaction needs to be recorded. And this all happens within different types of organization. At the same time, maybe Bank B has its ATM not at their premises, but at the shop. So they need to establish a contract location with them. They need to look, for example, at maintenance and to look at that. So what the users see with their UI is not really representative of all the complexity that goes on behind the scenes. And in order to deal with this, we really need to understand all this complexity. Another actors that I forgot to mention before, which I think is very interesting and what people might not know about, is that cash, the access to cash is actually regulated by the government, as it is perceived as one of the basic rights. So banks cannot just simply put ATMs where they want. They need to put them in strategic locations to be accessible by everyone. So now, not all the people are like the same. So here I just captured a persona that is a representative model of a specific type of users. Here we have just Mark, 35 from Leeds, just trying to go, he needs to find an ATM nearby home. Possibly his challenge is trying to find that nearby a grocery store that he's trying to go to, and he wants that free of charge. Now, personas get really effective because they try to give you all that emotional aspects of all types of users. So I just captured a quote for you, and just imagine that actually Mark's kids are not old enough to have a bank card, so he is the one to withdraw money with them. So what would that how would this implication influence him throughout this journey? Now, we can create many different types of personas. We can look, for example, at people with disability and trying to understand how they move within a user journey. And what is a user journey? Basically, a user journey, it is a series of steps that the users might go through and the experience that the user will have throughout that. So the highs, the peaks, and the lows, and all this information will give us the direction on where the main pain points are. As well, one thing that we can try to do is look at the service blueprint, and so look at the steps behind that journey. So how is the organization able to deliver the service that we are given? So this is actually really quite easy for us as a service designer. If anyone is a service designer, they might be familiar with most of the methods I referenced. And in any case, there is lots of literature that we can get out of these methods. This gets a bit more complicated when we start looking at ways of working. And the reality of organization is that they spend really lots of time discussing what to do and not enough discussing how to do that. So there is a common belief and which is hidden inside of organization, that is actually we can deliver a digital transformation journey like we used to before. So like just delivering new stuff in the old way. But we don't feel it's the same way. So as Sparck and BJSS, we have our own type of approach, and we use these three main methodologies to deliver a project, and three main ways of working, which are design thinking, that focuses on design for user needs, lean startup to experiment and validate solution, and enterprise agile to deliver solution at scale. Now, this is our own model. There are other consultancies that have different, but generally what I would say is that nowadays in digital transformation, everyone uses more or less a combination of these three type of methodologies and ways of working. Now, it would be too difficult to me to go into all of them right now, but I just want to tell you that this is not the way many organizations work. And specifically, what I will look at is about how certain organizations fail to implement design ways of working. So that will be really the focus of the second part of this discussion on the challenges. And I just want to say that despite me focusing on the design, actually, Lean Startup and Enterprise Agile face similar experiences as well. So what is design thinking? There are so many books talking about different type of definition of design thinking. I don't want to bore you to this. One that I really like is just like thinking about design thinking as the way designers think and do. So not only about the way designer plan processes, but also how they put them in place. Now, what are the principles connected to design thinking? Again, there are many of them. Here it just captures the one which I think are more relevant and more common. And the main point about design thinking, it is a process, it's a mindset, it's a culture, and it's a craft. And its main principles are empathy towards the users, to try to understand what the users feel and how the users interact with your product. It is about collaboration, so trying to co-design with the users. It's try to be very action focused, so try to test and continuously test and learn. And it is about visual thinking and doing it. Really, the secret weapon of design is trying to make things as visual as possible. And this helps to reframe the problems. Now, there are many benefits connected to design thinking. Here I just captured 4, which are very common in design thinking literature. So the first one is about problem solving. By these innovative ways of working, design thinking is able to solve problems that we normally define in jargon as wicked problems. So problems that no one ever thought they were possible to solve before. We're able to do rapid prototypes, so to quickly design and test products with users. We are able to grow creative confidence inside the organization, so it grows people's confidence in the creative process, and we are able to foster radical innovation, so radically change products and services within organization. Now, again, there are many different types of professionals dealing with this. As a service designer, I'm only part of them. As I mentioned before, there are strategies, there are user research, and there are product designer. What is common between all of them is now there is an increasing demand for this type of professionals. So this is an article that I read the other day, which I really liked, and is the change in the design to developer ratios in tech companies. So the one that really struck me the most is IBM on the bottom corners, which is like, in 2012, there used to be 1 designer every 72 developers. And now in 2017, that ratio changed to 1 every 8. So this meaning how much a tech company like IBM now is valuing the work that designers and design thinkers do. There are so many companies now that have established design thinking practice. Some of the most famous examples are Airbnb, Spotify, and Netflix, but all Google, Apple, IBM, Amazon, all those big tech giants have somewhat implemented design thinking in their practice, and it becomes really strategical in their point of view. Now, if these are the leaders in the industry for design thinking, we don't have to forget that there are not only them. So if this is a model developed by the Danish Design Council in 2003 that I really liked, and shows how design can be implemented differently inside of organizations. So there are organizations which are quite hostile in terms of the design. So they are in a non-design step. So design is not applied systematically. There are organizations which think about design as form giving. So there are just organizations which just think about styling new products. So what I normally say, trying to make it pretty. There are organizations which are now trying to design processes around design thinking. So trying to integrate them in the development process, for example. And there are then all these other major tech organizations, which I mentioned before, which have much more knowledge on that. Now, if you work with some organization on digital transformation, you really have to try to understand where these organizations stop. your organization sits within these steps. And if you are on the lowest part of the scale, as a service designer, you face a challenge, because actually it takes time to move up, and decades if you are on the lowest level. So the hard challenge that we have throughout that is how, as service designer, can we find some ways through these hostile ways of working that are set up in place. So how can we really work when design is not acknowledged as part of the organization? I do believe this is possible if we try to stay true to the design thinking principle. So what I started to think about is like, how can we apply the design thinking principles to less digitally mature, less design mature organization? So how can we apply empathy, collaboration, action focused, and visual thinking, doing and reframing problems to this specific challenge? So what I will start to present you now is some advices that I want to give you on how to tailor them specifically to this type of case. So how can you apply empathy in a less design mature organization? Well, my main advice to you is to try to adopt a research mindset with your stakeholders. So now many designers are all about the users. Let's try to really understand the users in what they do, what they need, etc., etc. However, there is more than the users in your project. So there are many stakeholders that are just important to you, and many actors in the ecosystem map, as we have seen before. And the tips that I want to give you is get to know them better, ask for their experiences, and learn to speak their language. So what do I mean by getting to know them better? Really is ask them loads of questions. Just try to get a meeting in the diary to ask those questions. So just imagine to go there and ask them, oh, what does your team value? So what is really success for them? And what do they need from you to make their job easy? And I believe this question will start to give you like a bit of an idea of what is important for the rest of the stakeholders. So try to see how much it matches with your briefs that you were given before. Second tip is ask for their expertise. A common assumption when you go into a digital transformation project is you are the first one thinking about change. But actually, people might have encountered that problem before. They might have tried to solve that, and they might have learned about that. So they might have a successful experience or a less successful experience. This is invaluable information that you can get from your stakeholders. So I really recommend you to ask that to them at the very least, to make them feel heard in the digital transformation process. Finally, I think one other tip that is very important to adopt is to try to speak their language. So try to learn your stakeholder jargon and use it to communicate value. Now, I got this inspiration when I was looking at users researchers in their practice. So one trick that they always do in their practice is trying to play back the user words to make sure they feel listened. And I think this is so important in a practice of a service designer that I tried to implement that myself. So try to really map this type of jargon and try to adapt the way I communicate value outside of all my fancy buzzwords, also to the way other people understand that. So what about collaboration? The reality about collaboration is that if you are in a journey to digital transformation, you cannot deliver great experiences just you and your team. You need more than that. So you really need to involve your stakeholders. So the tips that I want to give to you in a hostile organization is try to invite the stakeholders to the creative session and try to master the art of facilitation. What do I mean by involve the stakeholders in the creative process? So I mean to show them how to come up with ideas and break the myth of not being creative. Now, I think that most of the designer on the call will agree that the best thing about designing is really to have the possibility to be creative, to experiment based on user needs. So there is a lot of assumption within people that have not used design that I'm not creative, where actually there are loads of tools that can make everyone creative. So if you invite people inside of the creative process, you can show them how you do that. So you can encourage to do that, encourage sketching with them, really to go on a whiteboard, sketch your concept and try to give the market to them. At the same time, you can try to involve them in fast ideation sessions. So one of the most famous methods to do that is to do a crazy eight. So in which you just fold the paper to make 8 square, and you try to come up with ideas in as fast as possible. And this then, as the ideas become live, will clearly show them the link between doing a sketch and then becoming the idea. So really show them all the creative process and how they can get involved into that. Second tip that I want to give you about collaboration is really to master the art of facilitation. Now, lots of the ways we do facilitation with the users, we can really apply the same principles with stakeholders in a hostile organization. So, for example, if you just get loud and opinionated stakeholders, listen to them and capture their concern. Make sure they feel heard, so their concern are really just documented. And this will also give you like lots of basis to play with their concerns and try to provide them more solutions. If you have quiet introverts, well, ensure they have a voice. Spend time with them and try to understand their perspective. If you have stakeholders with unclear requirements, capture what they say and play it back to them. Validate, continuously sense check that with them. If you have stakeholders with no opinions, just to try to come to you and ask for your advice, well, prototype your idea and get their feedback and continue to do that. So being able to switching between this type of facilitation will gain you loads of trust by them. So how can you be action focused in a space in which like organization don't give you trust? Well, my main advice is just to try to find the space, even outside of your brief. So help teams outside of your scope and don't despise quick wins in your journey. Here, what we are trying to do really is just put our foot in the door of the organization and try to show how design can deliver great things. So what do I mean by helping teams outside of the scope? So I believe that digital journey is a trust building exercise. So really the key benefits of this is just trying to learn more about the organization, understand where you can bring value inside of that, and foster interest in your practice. So if someone just comes out to you with a project that you think you can be involved, why not getting involved into that? And especially if those are quick wins. So if those are just tiny tasks, because normally I feel there is lots of misconception in trying to look at those tiny tasks as something not worth spending energy on. But I really think that they are key steps towards the digital journey, because they prove you can deliver value. They build momentum towards your practice. And they get people curious about your practice, because as soon as you start delivering, people will start to ask themselves, oh, how were they able to do that? And you will be able to engage a lot more on the way you would like to work and the way you would like to deliver. Finally, and almost most importantly, I really think that just like reframe every problem you're given. I really encourage everyone, once they get a brief, just to try to tear the brief apart and provide a different understanding of the problem. You don't know what went behind that brief in the process. So you don't know really like different people' perspective, inputs, fears, etc. And my main tips to do that is try to use the easiest language as possible and try to visualize problems. Now, what do I mean by using an easy language? So this is an example question on how I would deal with an easy question. And this just came as inspiration from the Design Sprint book, which was wrote by Jake Knapp, and which is part also of the way Google Venture work. So try to move away between, from KPIs, objectives, etc., but just try to ask people simple questions. So what does success look like for you? Try to get people visual and their understanding fears and emotions, and try to reframe the problem like in different timings instead of looking at a product roadmap or a timeline. So what would you like to achieve in 5, 3, 1 years? What could go wrong? And how bad would that be if that happens? And my favorite question of all is ask them, if you had a magic wand, what would you like to do? So just really capture their imagination, their hopes towards the digital process, and just try to design towards them. Think about them as your target, and you can discuss what is the best way to achieve that. Furthermore, it is very important to visualize problems. I really do believe this is like one of our main advantages as designers, because we're able to work with metaphors, we're able to work with maps, cards, canvases. We can just take a Word document and transform that in something completely different. A good example of this is just what I did on my talk. I could have just talked to you about the digital transformation journey and just leave that as a title, but I prefer to instead build that as a map, as a journey, like as if you're looking for a treasure hunt at the end of this. So I just really try to prompt people and think about metaphor and break the problems differently from the way they are used to. A good example of this is the book Visual Doing by Brand 2018 that I really recommend you to look at if you're interested in this topic. So how to work visually with whatever type of problems that you're trying to deal with. So what did we learn from this session so far? So there are two main types of challenges that we can experience inside of the digital transformation, at least from my experience. One of them is really trying to understand people correctly. And the second one is trying to establish effective ways of working. I believe that service design can help by two things that I described in the section before. It can help by broadening and deepening the understanding of people. So you can, with service design, you can consider all the actors important in your journey. So like through your ecosystem map, through your personas, etc. And you can engage with them to understand their perspective and collect valuable experiences and learning from them. Furthermore, you can break into the existing ways of working if you adapt your practice into them. So you can make digital transformation an inclusive process. So try to bring empathy also to your stakeholders and not you and your team. Furthermore, you can provide everyone with tools and methods to visualize processes and help them contribute with new ideas. So to really involve them in their creative process and how you do that. So now service design could help in many further ways. And this is not the talk in which I can just talk on my idealization of service design and what could really happen if everything was perfect. But I just want to prompt you in thinking about what could service design do if it was given the right resources. And this is going to introduce my last section that is about my recommendation towards digital transformation. So what do I mean by my recommendations? So if we think about this journey as we thought about before, so how can we adjust that journey? How can we make that a bit more straightforward, a bit more easy for everyone to work effectively to our target? So my first advice that I want to give you into that is to accept challenges. Now, if you noticed in the last slide, I didn't just draw a straight line because I don't believe into that. I just believe you can try to really work with this, and just like only know so little at the start of your project. So act, test, and learn, and throughout that. So just really embrace them. Don't try to push all the challenges towards the end of your timelines, etc. Furthermore, define yours. Avoid copying templates. I've never seen a standard digital transformation journey. I always believe there is a bit of fine-tuning that you need to do with that, and eventually have a direction. So spend some time defining where you're trying to go. Don't just assume that we all have the same expectation through that. The second advice that I want to give you is spend time doing some proper user research. So my recommendation is to hire a user researcher, but if you cannot do that, it's really important for you to never assume you know who are you designing for. So just talk to them. And finally, don't only consider one user and map your ecosystem. There are many more people in your project than you and your team and your users. So understand how these actors interact, and so use ecosystem maps, for example. Third advice for me that I want to give you is that ways of working matter. So take time to reflect, not only at what you do, but also at how you do it. So really, it's not just important to pile up deliverables after deliverables outputs after outputs. Try to understand also what are the outcomes in your work. So what did you change? How were you able to deliver these things? Did you do that by being completely stressed and like fighting with everyone, or were you able to work with that in a seamless team, delivering things effectively? And in this, care about your internal stuff. Digital transformation is about as much as the users as about who delivers it. So really spend some time thinking not only what you need to deliver to the client or to the final users, but how you can do that in a good way also for your internal stuff. And throughout it, always deliver value. So quick wins are a great trust building in that work. It's not just going to be just like that easy to arrive to our target. Finally, and most importantly, in my case, it is invest in your design team. I believe that there is no process of digital transformation which doesn't go with a combination of business people, techie people, and design people. So you need all of them to deliver a digital transformation. So as I know that many organizations don't have that type of design team, I really want to encourage you in trying to empower the design team to be able to deliver digital transformation, because design is there whether you do it consciously or not. If you start looking at organization from a design point of view, you will realize that there are lots of people taking a design ownership without really having the type of skills to do that. So it will be much more efficient if your design team is empowered to do that, because design is much more than pretty. Design is a key strategic element to the success of your business. So try to move away from the consideration not only of the aesthetics about the design, but also about the process that goes behind that. So as my final words, if you're a service designer, I want just you to think that you can trust your tools to help the team outside of your brief and regardless of the organization that you're in. And if you're embracing a process of digital transformation, well, consider about learning about service design or hire one like myself. And if any one of you is just interested in the topic, wants to read more, these are a couple of books that I really recommend to you. This is Service Design Doing is a great book about service design methodology. It's probably my favorite about methodology because it was created collaboratively across a great number of service design organizations around the world. And I think it provides really with a very comprehensive view of service design as a topic. A good example of a book that I'm actually reading right now, and it's Good Services from Lou Don, which talks about what good in a service looks like. Another book that I read this year and which really struck me as mind-blowing was What CEOs Need to Know About Design. So this is a book by Audrey Crane, and you can really read that in 40 minutes. It's a really small book, and it's like all the essential pieces that you need to know about design. The other two books, which I found really important, is like the Design Sprint book was created from the Google Venture experience on how to solve a big problem and test new ideas in just 5 days. And Creativity.Inc., which is a book in which the Pixar creator Ed Catmull explains how he was able to establish a successful creative organization. Other resources that you can use are, for example, the Business Value of Design Thinking, of Design, actually, this is a typo, of McKinsey that was written in 2018. And Business Thinking for Designers is just like a new report that came out from Envision, which shows you how as a designer you can communicate effectively with business. If you have more questions, feel free to screenshot this. This is just like my email. You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can just chat to us at Sparck. So you can just send us an email. We are open. We are just continuing to deliver great, amazing talks. So I just want to thank you, all of you, for just trusting to you with 40 minutes of your time. I just don't know if I ran over. And now it's time for a Q&A session because we all love questions, don't we?
Thanks, Davide. That was a really great talk. I loved how personal you made it and giving your advice as well as giving us some books and some references throughout as well. We do have some questions coming in, so if anybody has a question to ask Davide, if you could please put it in the Q&A chat. So let's get started. So do you have any go-to methods for visualizing a brief?
Oh. This is a good one, actually. Well, so one thing that I'm starting to experiment these days, and this is, I'm not sure if I can refer to you to a specific methodology, is now with lots of collaboration tools, you are able to export text and make it become a post-it. So for example, I don't know if you are using Miro as a tool, and I think Mural probably has the same type of functionality, but if you start to just copy the text from a Word document, just like into different types of post-its, that will just help you to start breaking the concept and maybe try to reorganize that as you feel. So what I want to tell you with that is, I don't feel I have necessarily the right method for you to direct you towards, but I really feel that a key visual elements of trying to move away from a paper to post-its with keywords and start playing and reorganizing that. So maybe looking about affinity maps on how you can organize those post-its, about topics, how you can reframe that I feel can be a good way to start. I'll try to think about some more as I go through to the Q&A, and if they come, I'll just pick some of them. But yeah. Oh yeah, actually, I mean, two other ones that you can start doing is like value proposition canvas are a really great tool to do that, because you will start looking at what you're trying to deliver from the perspective of the users. So trying to maybe look at what the users want, what the users value. So the way, for example, I don't know if many of you in the call are familiar with this type of methodology, but the value proposition canvas is divided in two. There is one part about the product and one part about the users, and you try to look how the product you are trying to create matches values and pain points and needs of the users. So try to establish that organization. So that could be a good one to start, and I've used that I would say many times in the past. I remember also once with Rebecca, we did a value proposition canvas in one of our last projects as one of the first ones.
Yeah, I think the value proposition canvas is a useful tool to get you going with documenting the brief and understanding what are the client needs, but also what is the user element of it? What do you need to go away and research? What do you need to plan? What do you need to design? What do you need to test? Another question we've got coming in from Lisa is, should we still be calling it digital transformation? Isn't it just transformation to cater for current and future needs better? It's a great question.
Oh, yeah, this is a great question. And actually, I think it's very relevant nowadays. I propose myself not to talk about any COVID situation, but actually, I mean, we're all experiencing that. So we will probably experience working from home, dialing in with these conferences. So yeah, I think this is a very good observation. What I think is like, we normally like to put digital as a way to emphasize all the new technologies that are available, but really transformation will touch so many elements of your organization that digital is just like one aspect of them. So for example, I'm just currently working with a client which is trying to deliver a digital product, and they weren't yet prompt to the understanding of the fact that their journey was omni-channel. So we're going to touch so many types of technologies, so many types of channels, and just even like physical interaction are as much important as the digital ones. So the way I understand this is there are so many layers to digital that goes as well from non-digital to fully digital, and so all the crazy AI things that are going on. So you can really pick the right level of digital transformation you need. So yeah, I do think is a good observation on that.
How can one make sure that multiple mental models of end users will be satisfied with one service design standard?
So can you reframe to me that question just to make sure I understand that better? Or can you repeat that for me?
How can we make sure that multiple mental models of end users, so I'm guessing if people are trying to do different things, they've got different end goals. Mm-hmm. How can we satisfy those different mental models of end users with one service design standard or practice?
Well, I think one easy way to start doing that is to really work on creating good personas. So really working on personas which are very diverse. Before, just because of a problem of time, I just showed you one persona, but you can really create a persona for every mental model that you identify. So you can almost identify them as behavioral archetypes in a way. Sometimes they are referred to that in that way, especially when you work, for example, with grocery retail. It is much more common to define them as behavioral archetypes. And so I feel that what you can do as you get those personas which have different mental models, different needs, etc., you can try to walk them through the journey as I showed you before, and see how their perspective might change. Or maybe try to look really, for example, at the people who are really the troublemaker for your service. So really the people that you feel are really different, so the outliers, and try to provocatively design for them. So I do believe that in any, like, let's say you will have easy users and more trouble users, as you have easy stakeholders and more trouble stakeholders. So even if you cannot create as many personas, try to focus to those ones that are more critical for you and for the success of your project. So really spend some time and effort on that. And I hope that answers your question. I would get really visual right now and just draw on a whiteboard if I had that to repeat that, but sadly I cannot do that.
I think it answered the question. How do you decide which tools to use when your team has different skill levels and knowledge, or which tools are the most versatile and can be used for multiple purposes?
Okay, I think this is a very good and relevant question. So first of all, because I think, so my starting point usually in this type of consideration is how much do you value methods and tools? So, and here I'm going to be very provocative, but as I was studying, and when I was studying design thinking, I was studying that in Sweden. Before adopting any methods, I was just encouraging hacking the methods, so just breaking that. So really looking at what you are trying to achieve in that method. So sometimes I feel that you can achieve similar outputs with different type of methods. So I can make you an example of that. So you can use, for example, different type of artifacts. So sometimes service blueprints, I'm very comfortable working, with online tools, but then lots of people maybe don't use them. So I just send them an Excel spreadsheet. If you don't have an Excel spreadsheet, you find a whiteboard to just recreate a service blueprint in that way. And I would recommend you in that case personally to just look at the easiest tool that you can get to start from. So first to just try to get people enthusiastic about the tool, and then slowly move them to more and more sophisticated tools. So on a point as well, again, of journey to, let's say, tool maturity, again, to use this type of this thing. So what I mean by that is, for example, if someone doesn't know what is a journey, well, just try to tell them about a map and just to tell them about a timeline, and then slowly start moving the process towards saying, oh, what about if we think this about steps? And as we have steps, oh, well, how do you feel the user is in that step? Is it happy or sad? Or what is the most critical step? And then just start slowly developing through an experience map, and maybe try to enrich that and just ask them, oh, what do you think the user feels do throughout that step? So maybe looking about empathy maps, etc. So to summarize my my answer, I would say try to always start from the easiest tool and try to walk people through that, and try to be the evangelist of your tool and method. So try to really convert them towards that.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. I think sometimes just throwing people in the deep end can work as well. Like, I know for me, I really struggled using Miro at first. Davide is like a whiz on it, and he just creates all these amazing boards, whereas I'm a researcher by nature and I like to do things thoroughly, and this was a different creative tool for me to use. I got thrown in the deep end, and now I feel like I can use it. Probably still not as well as Davide, but I can use it now.
Yeah.
How do you embed a culture of continuous improvement and transformation rather than it becoming a one-off, time-limited thing?
Okay, so this is a question. I'm not sure if I have for you a final answer on that, because I think I'm just getting really like into the topic of change management now. So really like is a topic that I want to master more before giving you a final answer. So one thing that I found very useful as a personal experience is to try to keep some of the practices going. So for example, one thing that like maybe the easy ones, for example, like having Kanban boards, having, for example, stand-ups and all of them. Sometimes, even if they are not necessary, they are really like a useful way to keep continuing people like thinking about that way. So if you can really just keep the slot going and just provide that and that. And then I also personally have my own tactics of just trying to push this through. So like lots of times, for example, even though if I think I have already a good answer, I just to prompt people and just saying, oh, we should test this with the users, for example, and continuously to have those ways of saying that really prompt people towards more continuous experimenting way of doing that. So I think there are small hacks that you can do throughout that. Furthermore, I would say that usually, in my experience, transformation and change are really like successful only when you convince one of your important stakeholders to do that. So if you really can find an advocate, which we start to get sensibilized and have somewhat a power inside of your organization, that will help you so much more. So if you really just can get one evangelist within your organization, which you feel have power of change, it will probably drive loads of considerations in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. A great answer. So I think we've got time for one last question. So according to this situation, so COVID-19, how can we get real user experience during when we're running research?
I feel almost you would be even better than me to answer to this. Do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll chip you like. I think, yeah, given the situation that we're all behind closed doors, we're all separate, so we can't actually be running any face-to-face research at the moment. I think you can still mimic that real life, real user experience feeling using remote tools. So at Sparck, we are doing a lot of that at the moment. So you can do that by Skype, just as we're doing now, Zoom, and actually speaking to that person through that video call, if you like. To get the real user experience, what I would recommend is actually sending them a prototype or a version of whatever it is that you're creating, a website, version 1 of the website or version 1 of an app, and actually getting them to open it on their computer and look at it, or on their phone, and share their screen with you so you can see what they're doing and how they're interacting with it naturally, as opposed to you walking through it with them. It's always good to see how people naturally interact with interfaces without you kind of prompting it. But I would agree, it is quite a challenging situation that we are in, but I do think there are ways to be getting that research and getting that feedback to make sure we are still building user-centered design products. I hope that answers your question there. Yeah,
and I think also sometimes it's just important to do some prep work. So for example, maybe you don't have the material to create really research-based personas, but why not start and just create a proto-persona? So just like some personas with your assumptions, so you're able then to test them as soon as the situation opens up. So really just try to get all the back work that you can do, and just before then you're actually able to speak with your users. And I think what also Rebecca just answered you perfectly. Just try to use different tools.
Mm-hmm. And I think that ties into the last question that we got at the bottom there. So is some user research or testing always better than nothing, even if it is just testing the prototype with family members in your household? I would totally agree. Like, always some research is better than nothing. The great number is 5. Obviously there's some discussion around whether it's 5 or more, but I would definitely agree that some research is better than nothing. Use the people that you are living with to get that sense check. Does this work? Is it usable? Does it look nice? Or whatever the questions are.
And also, if I can just start on that, I feel like if you don't have the chance to do a user research, sometimes something that I provocatively do is just thinking about the worst thing that can happen and just really play that back to people. Maybe they put that to you as a blocker. So say, oh, we didn't do user research. I don't know if this is a plausible situation. Well, what if there is a user that does this and this and this. So try to break into that, and yeah, get as much user research as you can. That is my final advice.
Well, thank you for all the questions, and thank you for the talk, Davide. I don't know if you've got any final comments, Karen.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I can't actually believe that you were nervous about doing that today. You sounded like a well-seasoned presenter. So everyone, we will be following up. So if there's any questions that we've missed, or there's anything that you would, you think about afterwards, do let us know, because Davide will be creating a bit of a blog on what he's talked about today, any useful takeaways on anything that we've covered. And also I'll include the video. So I guess, thank you for joining us today. We will be actually starting a series of Sparck sessions in the coming weeks, so do watch this space for that. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the festival. Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Davide and Rebecca. Rebecca has actually been fantastic this whole festival, so big thank you to you.
Oh,
So
thank
great. You. Take care, everyone.